This tent, you know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast. I'm Kev, your host as always, and alongside me for this Wolves review podcast, I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe, and we've also got town fan Dan Barrett-Davis back. We're still without Tony. He's failed another fitness test, but he is on the mend, and hopefully he'll be back on set as soon as possible. Gents, how are we doing?
Yeah, really good, mate. Yeah. Good.
Excellent stuff. Okay, coming up on this podcast, we will look back at Luton's first point in the Premier League. We'll go through the game. We'll talk about the positives, one or two negatives. We will point out why Match of the Day got it completely wrong and why it was actually a penalty on Saturday afternoon. And we'll pick out one player in particular, I think that we'll all agree, impressed over the course of the 90 or so minutes. Before we start this podcast, though, the amount of people that have come up to me since we released the episode with David Wilkinson and given us great reviews and everything, we'll really, really, really appreciate that. I'm sorry if I've not had time to reply to everyone. We will try and get around to that at some point, but we're glad that you enjoyed it. And once again, we thank Wilco for being such a tremendous guest. And thanks to everyone for the comments on the podcast that we've released either side of that, particularly the Wolves preview one, where we had a few precious Wolves fans who gave us a few comments. And
hello, precious Wolves fans.
And actually, we didn't disrespect you. Based on yesterday, we gave you far too much respect, and that won't happen on this particular episode of the podcast. So, James, let's get cracking. Mm-hmm. As you was on the preview podcast, it's only fair to start with you on the review one. What did you make of the game? I guess most importantly, the town are off the mark, but in true Luton style, we still come away feeling a little bit deflated. Yeah,
it's kind of two things at once, isn't it, really? Because you get the first point, everybody's really happy with that, and they dominated the game. Best performance of the season so far. This improvement journey keeps happening. I know it keeps getting talked about, but it's true. But then on the flip side, you're like, well, they were down to 10 men after 35 minutes, 39 minutes, something like that. And so you'd be expecting a 0-0 to go on and win it. The start of the second half wasn't ideal. The rest of the game was pretty positive, but still struggling to stick the ball in the net, which is it's a bit of a concern, but not something to get overly worried about at the moment if we are talking about this improvement journey.
Yeah, exactly, and it is an improvement journey. And I mean, Dan, for you often see on like the Sky graphic Luton over the last 10 years and the improvement. Well, actually, if you had that graphic and just had it for this season, it would start off here sort of low, and it would kind of go up in a 45-degree angle because we are improving with every performance. And now we've actually got a point, something tangible to show for our efforts.
Exactly, and it goes back to what we've said many times about since we've been back in the Football League, how we've gradually grown and grown. I mean, you look at the gaps when we came up from League One to the Championship, it was probably like that. And people listening, that's not much to go on.
It's just like that if you're listening.
It's just like that. And the Premier League, it's like that, but a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And what we have done, I mean, it took it took COVID to sort ourselves out in the Championship, and we stayed up on the last day with the skin of our teeth, and we've gone on and improved no end since then. But I'm actually seeing more improvement in 5 games than I have for a long time. I'd say over a longer period of games from last season, if you like. Yesterday was a bit frustrating, but we're getting chances. All right, we're not scoring freely at the moment, but we're making chances. You've only got to look at how many attempts we had. I think it was something like 20 attempts on goal yesterday. That's a huge improvement on what we've been getting, and long may that continue.
Yeah, it really is.
Let's hope there's not another pandemic to get it all going. Do without that.
That would be rather nice.
I think hell would freeze over first, wouldn't it? Surely.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully that is the case.
Do this on Zoom again.
Yeah. All of this sort of doom and gloom that's been in the outside world portrayed at Luton, James, and all of a sudden there's 2 teams below us. We've got our first point on the board. Things are going in an upward direction. And, you know, these people can worry about other teams now. The Burnleys and Sheffield Uniteds of this world. Don't worry about Luton. We're making our own way. We'll be, you know, we're getting there.
Well, luckily, just as we were recording this podcast, Sheffield United have taken the heat off Luton massively, hopefully with an 8-0 drubbing they received it against Newcastle. So they're bottom of the league, and that's nice. I mean, we shouldn't mock them too much because it, you know, very well could happen to Luton.
Well,
you know,
we've still got to play both of those as well. So
we've got to play Newcastle, Liverpool, Man City, all that stuff. But for now, we'll bask in that little bit of glory that they've given it. But yeah, I mean, there was some praise, wasn't there, for Luton, punditry-wise, which was a turn up for the books because we haven't seen much of that.
Well, we weren't last either. That was also a turn up for the books. Even though Palace and Fulham was 0-0 and bored the shit out of everyone, I still expected them to find reason to put it in ahead of Luton against Wolves.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I mean, if you just watched the match of the day one as well, you didn't get the full flavour of what Luton were about. I mean, there was 4 or 5 opportunities or chances in the first 5-10 minutes. I think they really, as we were talking about in the preview podcast, we just wanted them to go at Wolves full throttle, and they did it. They went with Ogbene, who I know we'll talk about, who was fantastic, and dropped Mads Andersen to the bench, which gave more of an attacking option in the formation side of it. And yeah, Wolves didn't know what hit them for 25 minutes, and it was just that they couldn't stick the ball in. You know, Carlton Morris hits the post with a worldy shot that goes in. Maybe the floodgates opened and little things like that. I mean, Doughty had a shot that Morris got in the way of. He was trying to get out of the way of. He got more in the way of by doing it. But yeah, there's little things like that, really. And there's not too many times Luton opened them up, but plenty of opportunities, and chances and crosses and things to get in there. I mean, one thing I would say is that Wolves put in so many blocks. They were just throwing bodies in the line. That says a little bit as well, doesn't it, about how many chances you create. And I think they were, you know, well above 20 blocks for the game. And it felt like that, really. Some of them were last ditch. There was a Jacob Brown opportunity for a header that they sort of just got a little nick on, that sort of thing. And it was frustrating, but I'm also wondering whether that is the level as well. When you know, the half a yard that you've got to get a shot off, maybe they're closing that down, so it needs to be even more, you know, on the money. So we'll see. But I mean, those are the positive things, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I think everything in this league has to be first time, doesn't it? The things I've noticed now that we've had 5 games are they don't give you the ball back if you give it to them. So you have to protect that football. The restarts with the multi-ball system in the Premier League, the ball's back in before it's gone out of play, whereas Luton are still letting teams get back and get into their position whilst we're working out where we're going to throw it and all that. These other teams, they don't really give a shit who throws it or who they throw it to. They just got to get the ball back in play and get on the... And Wolves did that a few times. Thankfully, nothing come of it. They'd still be playing now, and I don't think that anything would come of it. But that's another thing. And then, like you say, when you're in those key areas, in the Championship, time froze. You had all the time in the world to do what you want. In this league, they put it onto plus 30 mode on Sky, don't they? And it's gone before you can blink. But these are the things that we're going to learn. And, you know...
Well, certainly, speaking to Edwards in the press conference afterwards, he was saying, I mean, he said it in the pre-match presser that I was in as well, but he was saying it's almost like a different sport that they're playing now, the speed of it. Because he got asked about what's the difference, and he just went, everything. It's mostly speed and then execution. And he's right, because you just got to look at the Wolves' goal. They had absolutely nothing going for them until that point. Yeah. And then they score and get their noses in front. And they only had 3 shots in total on target, and 2 of them came in the same corner. And fairly routine stops for Kaminsky. So, you know, from Luton's perspective, you know, reducing them and keeping them stat is good. From a Wolves perspective, that was pretty poor from them, I would imagine. And maybe they're one of the teams we've got to finish above.
Not if you're their manager, though.
Yes. Do you know what? I was in the press conference, post-match press conference yesterday, and he spoke for 15 minutes. And other than the fact that he swears blind that the penalty shouldn't have been a penalty and that Wolves deserved to win, which were both delusional, he actually spoke very well. It was quite an interesting chat on what he was talking about. There's not many times that I've had an opposition manager come like that. The last one was Mickey Beale when he came with QPR before.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Loyal, yeah.
Before he went up to Rangers. But it was quite an interesting chat apart from that.
Apart from the two bits that matter.
Two bits that everybody saw.
The thing that I was really encouraged by, Dan, was we had Wolves panicking, particularly in that first half. There were an awful lot of passes that went straight out of play. Bits of control that when Ogbene ran towards the fullback, he'd miscontrol it, it would go out of play. And then they had that horrible mix-up, didn't they, where Dawson decided to have a shot on goal while Sarr was coming in the opposite direction. Luckily for them, Kilman just got there before Ogbene. But it all struck of a side that had basket case written all over it, really. And that wasn't just because Wolves were or are shit. It was because we put them under that pressure and forced them into that. And that was the encouraging thing. We've said all along about the effect that Kenilworth Road can have.
Yeah.
We didn't really see it against West Ham. They killed it. But we did see it on Saturday. And going forward, that is going to be so massive if we're going to stay up in this league.
I agree with you. And anybody who's seen Kenilworth Road and like heard us and everything like that, experienced it on a match day, will tell you that it's a horrible place for other teams to come and play. And that's how we like it. And we need to really, really take full advantage. I mean, that back pass, if you watch it, Ogbene sort of sees it that split second too late. If he goes a split second early, that's a goal.
I mean, I don't know how you couldn't see that the goalie was coming anyway. He was dressed like a fucking banana, and I mean, you can't miss that coming at you, surely to Christ. But he did, mind you, he did play for the lot down the road, didn't he? So maybe that explains it.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably watched too many Harry Maguire videos as well.
The thing for me about the start of the game was that, and we talked about it before, there's an element that the players have to influence what the crowd does, but then the crowd get into it as well. And everything about that first 10 minutes was so Luton. The atmosphere was absolutely fantastic. I mean, admittedly, I'd been moved back from the press benches on the bobbers back to the main stand, back to my old seat, which I really liked because I liked the view in the first two. It was unique, but the noise and even the rumble of feet when people are getting excited, and there's a couple of people that sit in front of the press benches that bang on the wooden bit on the front. I love all that stuff. I mean, during the Watford game, someone knocked my plug out. I told
yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah,
I love it, and so it adds to the sort of sense of it, really. So I did enjoy it.
On that, what you're saying about Luton players sort of being under pressure to sort of influence the crowd in the first 20 minutes. Of old, if we hadn't got a goal, then it was well known for other teams to say, look, try and silence them in the first 20 minutes, just keep Luton out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that
doesn't seem to be the case now, because I think everybody's on board with what Edwards and the team are trying to do.
That was the conference tactics, wasn't it?
It was. It was a little bit like that before them days as well. I seem to remember everybody was like, look, keep them quiet for 20 minutes, which under Lenny Lawrence was piss easy to do. And then the crowd start getting on the back. It's advantage visiting team, but it doesn't seem to be the case so much anymore because everybody's on the side now. Everybody sees what we're doing. And again, that's benefiting us.
It really is, yeah. I mean, we asked the boys to come out with a real fast start in the first 20 in the preview pod, and that's exactly what they did. Width of the post away from taking the lead for the second time.
Great shot.
In 2 Saturdays. And if they both go in, we might be sitting here on 6 points, above some proper giant sides and alongside the likes of Man United and all that. Whereas as it is, we're only on 1 point, but things are definitely heading in the right direction, that is for sure. And Rob alluded to that in his post-match presser, so let's let you hear what he said, because we sent James along to get all the views of Rob Edwards, and actually, as he alluded to earlier in the podcast, Gary O'Neill. So here's what they had to say after the match.
Yeah, I'm pleased. I think it should have been all three. But I'm really proud of the players. The performance was excellent. It's a good day for the club. I thought the supporters were great. Everything that we asked of the players to give the crowd something to shout about, to get them involved, to engage them. I thought we did that, did it really well. Started the game so well. Probably the best we've ever played since we've been at the club. I think the level of the game, Fat Wolves couldn't really get out of their half. Completely dominated the game. And we did really for the majority of it, the vast majority. One or two moments, but Wolves are going to have that. They've got some quality players. So overall, I'm really happy, really proud, but we should have won. I think with the way the game went, it's an opportunity missed because we did dominate the game. I think we deserved to win. To be so dominating with 11 men, when they get a man sent off, you really want to try and then find a way to win. But they've got quality. I think Neto is a top player. We'd all agree with that. We lose the ball cheaply, and he has got. Then he scores a great individual goal. So then it did become difficult. So to get then something from the game becomes a bit more of a positive. So I've got to look at the performance. The lads are flat. The lads are deflated because they all feel. I think everyone could see it that was here today. There was a win there for us. But I think it shows how hard the Premier League is. I think it shows how good you've got to be. You've got to be almost perfect then to get anything from it. And today we were close to that, and in terms of how we wanted to play. And but we haven't won. But I've got to try and look at the whole thing, and I've got to look at the performance. I've got to look at the improvement. And I know there's loads more we can do. I know there's loads more we can be better at. But we're competing, and we're competing well, especially in the last three games. We're not giving big chances away, and we're looking a threat. I thought the red card was red. I don't think there's any doubts about that. I thought my initial view on the penalties that we've had better shouts over the last two games for penalties, but we didn't get them. But I think the hand is or the arm is up and in an unnatural position. I know it's deflected, so if I was them, maybe I'd be a little bit disappointed on that one. But it's obviously been checked and stood, so we'll certainly take it. But I think we've had better shouts in the last two games, to be honest.
Yeah, it's never a penalty. I mean, it's absolutely terrible decision. I think it. If that is a penalty, we're in a real bad place with where the rules are. I mean, I've got the rules that were sent to us on my phone, and mitigating circumstances for handball are if it hits the same player on a different body part and has a significant change of trajectory, then it's not handball. I want to move back away from that as quickly as we can, because there's a group that underperformed massively for a spell. I asked big questions of them and they gave absolutely everything, and we leave with a point, which is probably more than what people would have expected with 30 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. Rob's still obviously delighted with what we do. It's just now that final bit, isn't it? We kind of said it in the build-up to the game, James. We said it after the Fulham game. The performance levels now are where you need to be in the part of the Premier League that we're going to reside in this season. I'm not really worried if we don't match the performance levels of Manchester City and Liverpool and all of that. It's not going to happen. We're not going to be judged on it. But these sort of 7, 8, 9 teams that we are going to be in and around, we're there now. We just got to put that ball in the back of the net, and hopefully the fact that we got a point, I think Tom Lockyer might have said something similar. We've got that point now. We can kind of not relax, but there's a little bit of confidence now. They're not looking at a league table with a duck egg next to their name. It's step by step, but we're getting there now. And now the next step is now go and get them 3 points.
Yes, you can breathe easier, I think is
that's the term I was looking for.
We'll help you with the words, Kev. After you've muffed it up.
I think it does take a little bit of a monkey off the back. But they've known from the performance levels at the Fulham game particularly, parts of the West Ham game, but this one mainly, this was the best performance. And that's all you can really ask for. Is we'd all want to be this lightning fast start where it get 3 wins quickly on the board, and it feels like they're coming. Honestly, that's why anyone of a Luton tilt is not too worried. It's just this outside noise where they're going, well, Luton are going to struggle. But like I say, the only thing really is at this moment in time is like, who's going to take the initiative and put the ball in the net, because that's what we need. But you can't argue in the amount of forward impetus and chances created, and there was so many good performances on the day from everywhere. I mean, to the point that Lockyer didn't have the greatest moment for the goal. I mean, I think he showed a lot of nous generally. You'd want him to clear out Neto and just take the yellow maybe. But every other aspect of his game was wonderful, but he didn't have to do much defending. He didn't. He raked a couple of 40-yard balls out to the wings, they were unbelievable. I
thought Cal Naismith had come back, to be quite honest. I did.
And he was bursting out from the back, same as Bell, Burke, a lot of them. Doughty had a great game. A couple of good crosses, a couple of dodgy options for shooting, which, at the stage that he was doing it did feel a little bit desperate, only because they'd scored and it was so against the run of play. But he had a great game. Morris had one of his best games in the Premier League, probably his best game in the Premier League. And then Chio.
Yeah, come on to Chio. Do you know what? I'm so proud of the performance against Wolves, because it's so easy when all of this outside noise has been coming along to slump our shoulders, to kind of be cautious, to be negative, to be defensive. But we weren't that. We were positive. We were on the front foot. We were Luton. Our attacking centre halves, the two wide centre halves, they went into the opposition half. This is 11v11, not just 11v10. They were brave enough to commit and go forward, to join the attacks, to help Issa Kabore down the right-hand side in Reece Burke's case, to help Alfie Doughty down the left-hand side in Amari Bell's case, who I have to say was very, very good once again, Amari Bell. We've called him out a couple of times earlier in the season for maybe not having hit the standards that he would expect. But at Fulham, very good. And on Saturday, very, very good.
But there were loads, there's quite a handful of players that were slow to start. Lockyer we talked about, he was back to his best. Nakamba was slow to start. Didn't really have a lot of pre-season. Him too. He was back to it. Bell, another. Burke's come out flying since he's come back from the injury. So there's lots of positive stuff happening. It's this incremental thing. But I think everybody, Luton-wise, with a Luton head, is relatively happy about it. And it is just the outside noise. You just got to block it out. I mean, exactly. You can have a moan up about it. There's not, some of it's ridiculous, but the way that the rest of the football world talks about Luton is not the way that everybody of a Luton tilt thinks about it. It's not. It's totally different. They're all thinking about, well, you must stay in the league, you must do this, and you must do that, and that's not the agenda for Luton. It's part of the plan, and nobody can wrap their head around it. It's quite amusing to watch, because nobody's seen a team like Luton. And when you get up in the Premier League, they're talking about how you have to just try and survive and make the most of it. And you're like, listen, this is not pressure. Getting relegated to the conference, pressure.
Trying to get back up.
3 failed playoffs in the conference, that's pressure. Not nearly having a club, that's pressure. This is manna from heaven.
Pretty much everything we spoke to Wilco about on that podcast, that's pressure. This is just happy days. Dan, there was a slight tweak to the formation on Saturday, more of a 3-4-3 outlook to it rather than the 5-3-2 that we have had. And I think that front three, that's a thing that we're going to explore an awful lot, because yet again, Wolves have come with a front three. Every single side that we've played this season, bar none, have had a front three. We got to kind of blend into our surroundings there.
We have. I mean, I think he's tried to keep in with his way of doing things since he's come in, and since before he came in, we played a sort of similar. He's only tweaked the formation slightly, just done little things here and there. But when you're stepping up a level like we are, you've got to adapt and adjust, and you've got to have the nous to know when to change it, when not to change it. And I think very slowly, we're getting there. It's like I say, it's progress. It's step by step progress, and we're getting there each time. And if we have to change the formation, I think with the front three of Brown, Morris, and Ogbene, it's not a bad three. It's not a bad three.
With Elijah and Woodrow.
Yeah,
to come
exactly.
on
I'd like
after
to see Woodrow get a bit more action. I think.
I thought Eli had a good cameo as well when he came on. Pelly as well. I mean, that is the other thing. I think that there's good strength and depth there, and everybody will be desperate to prove themselves, and that's what showed yesterday when Pelly came on, added impetus, because it was a bit flat after the goal, and understandably, because
disappointment.
it came out of absolutely nowhere. There was no threat of that whatsoever. And you're thinking, oh no, here we go again. I mean, that's one thing we've got to sort of try and get used to. But the players responded, and that's the two-way relationship, isn't it? Because the crowd were really flat. The players upped it, and then we had a really good finish, and could have nicked something. There was pepper in the box with crosses and stuff, and unfortunately the Ogbene one was clearly offside. But for a beautiful 2 seconds there, you thought, yes, they've done it.
Yeah, indeed. So, let's go on to the decisions then. Dan, sending off. Even Gary O'Neill hasn't had any complaints with that, so it must have been an obvious sending off. It was the right decision, and actually, fair play to whoever saw it. I'm not convinced it was the ref that saw it because I'm pretty sure he was following the ball. But whoever did see it's got the right decision.
I mean, I looked back at it, and he sort of sees there's a tussle going on, and he's watching the play, and then I think he must have seen something out the corner of his eye because he was pretty quick to dish out the red. There's no complaints. You can get in a tussle with that. You could probably argue that Lockyer's left his leg in there, but if you look at it, he can't really do a lot with it. And then the player's just gone and put his stud through him, and you can't do it. It's violent conduct. It's a red card. Absolutely no question.
The nous thing I talked about as well. I think there's an element in previous games, and maybe more so when Luton came up to the Championship and trying to get used to the level where they weren't playing you weren't playing your full hand in those situations. And I applaud Tom for making the most of that, because it wasn't going to hurt him.
He was smart. He was smart in how he played it.
Not only Lockyer, but Morris and coming to back him up and making the most out of it. Because I don't think the ref saw it. I think his back was not to that incident, and maybe the lino saw it, or the fourth official.
Yeah, the linos never see anything.
Yeah, but
we know that.
But the fact that Morris made such a big deal out of it as well, while Lockyer's on the floor rolling around and doing the stamp.
I was going to say, if you didn't know what happened, Morris made sure you did know what happened.
But those little things, they are important, because if you didn't appeal for it, I think, take the West Ham big incident as well at the end, where Ward Prowse, everybody sees it,
catches it, doesn't he?
It didn't seem like anyone appealed for that, and you've got to at least try and put that in the mind of an official.
I mean, if it's the other way round, they do exactly what Morris and Lockyer did, don't they? So you've got to, again, fight fire with fire. It's if you can get that advantage, they're going to get it against you. So
a lot of the big clubs do it as well. I mean, in the 90s with Manchester United, Ferguson's main tactic was, if it looks like a foul, surround the ref till he gives it. I mean, and it worked for years.
I mean, even if you could call it soft.
Yeah. You
look at the Man City game. I mean, Gibbs White's gone down like he's taken a right hand from old Zizou Zhang that beat Joe Joyce, but barely got touched. He barely got touched.
Yeah,
he's down rolling around on the floor, and the red card's out. And when you look at it back, all he's done really is just grabbed his neck a little bit.
Yeah,
and you'd think he's knocked him out with a right hook.
The still they showed for that didn't really tell the full picture, because you see the still has always got his hand around his neck. It's a red card, but when you look back at it,
he's literally just put his hand there, isn't it?
It's like a little tap that, isn't it?
It's absolutely.
I think that's the thing as well. Like, I have to tell non-football fans who don't like football because they roll around like they're being hurt. You having to explain to people that don't get it that they're trying to gain an advantage is a pain in the arse.
Well, it does look particularly stupid at
it does. But if we're winning a free kick and it makes a difference between 3 points and a point,
yeah, no, absolutely.
Carry on. Who's going to tell them to stop it?
Just at a time where the Rugby World Cup's going on, and hard men are actually hard men. It does look a bit.
They're rubbish footballers.
They are, but it does look, apart from George Ford, thankfully enough, and it does look stupid.
Less of the egg chasing, please.
Let's come on to the main topic of conversation then, James. It was certainly the main topic of conversation on Match of the Day. After, to be fair, Martin Keown did give chapter and verse on why Luton were much improved on Saturday, which was actually fair play. He'd also wrote a column in his newspaper column about what we need to do to improve. And to be fair,
Thanks, Martin.
it was basically what we said on the podcast, really. So thanks for watching, Martin. And
Yeah.
Cheers, Martin.
and if you're watching this one, well done, mate. Yeah. So Issa Kabore picks the ball up in the box. It cuts inside. He has a shot. I think it was a shot. He has a shot across, whatever you want to call it.
They kicked the ball.
He did. He kicked it very hard. He kicked it at João Gomez. The ball hit his leg, flew up, hit his hand that was so high they had to re-divert flights into Luton Airport just in case they hit it. And the referee gave a penalty. VAR check. We saw that on our fancy new screen that we had a VAR check. 3 or 4 minutes later, or it felt like 3 or 4 minutes later, finally the check was through. Penalty. We've already heard Gary O'Neill not happy about that. If you watched Match of the Day last night, you got chapter and verse about the decision. Unfortunately, you got chapter and verse on the 2021 laws of the game, and we're playing the game in 2023, whereby all of this tosh about a deflection making any difference whatsoever to that to the flight of the ball is all irrelevant, because he is blocking a shot with his arm outstretched and he is effectively making his body bigger. Now, you just cannot do that, or if you do that and the ball hits your arm, that is a penalty, regardless if it hits something or not. Where it worked, if the ball hits something, then it hits your arm, is Joe Taylor at Wembley. When you're attacking and the ball flicks up and hits your arm, that then is an incident. But when you are blocking a shot or anything like that, and if you've watched the Arsenal-Tottenham game, you've seen another one in that incident, if you make your body bigger, whether the ball goes like a pinball machine, if it hits the hand, it is a penalty. So the referee was absolutely right. Gary Lineker and chums, sorry Martin if you're still watching, were wrong. And we've got the IFAB law to prove it as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The referee gave it immediately, and that's the thing for me. I'm fortunate enough now in the Premier League to have screens on the press desks and video replays, and when I saw that it deflected off his boot and hit his arm, even I was thinking, oh no, VAR is not going to give this now, because it was in the rules.
You've always been a bit old-fashioned and back in the day. I mean, look, you're wearing a 1986 Mexico shirt that you're trying to make out to be an Ireland one. That's how back in the day you are. But to be fair, shh.
Everybody, just squint and pretend this is a Republic of Ireland shirt.
Just in tribute to Ogbene, but
Exactly. It's as close as I can get. We ain't got the budget for anything more. So,
I mean, you're too tight to buy an Ireland shirt.
yeah, it'll come. It'll come. But yeah, so I was thinking that it was just the doubt of it, because, like we were talking about, there were so many chances, and you're thinking, how is this going to go and when go in? To get a penalty, great, and that's the chance to get back on terms, and then who knows after that, if Luton were playing pretty all right by that point. So
25 minutes to go.
yeah, absolutely. And so even I was surprised that in the heat of the moment that the VAR just said it was fine, which was great. But then I came out of the ground immediately, and me and you were talking, and I'm like, go and check on the IFAB website for me, can you? Because I don't know.
I know how to live on a Saturday night.
Yeah, we do. But it was just one of these, isn't it? But this is where the confusion comes in, because who knows what the rules are? They keep bloody well changing them.
Yeah.
But we had a look and researched it, and as you say, the only actual thing you can probably have a bit of a debate about is the proximity argument about how close it was. So it's a bit then laughable that me and you've done that research on our phones as I'm walking out the ground, and then you go on Match of the Day and they're talking about the deflection off the boot onto the hand. I don't know if it was on Match of the Day, but certainly in the press conference afterwards, people were talking of the hand in the air and the position of it, and Gary O'Neill was certainly saying you can't slide in without your hand going up and stuff like that. But,
Which he didn't. He was stood up.
but either way, I'm not talking about whether you agree with this rule, because it is a bit nonsense, because if you're going to slide, you're going to jump, your arms are going to go up. We all know this. But it is the rule, and it was in an unnatural position. And this is what we talked about when the James Ward-Prowse incident happened. We got the IFAB website up and we put it on the podcast, didn't we? Because it gives you a diagram of what handball is. And that's handball. So quite why some professional pundits who were former professional footballers are talking about all these things that aren't currently in the laws is beyond me.
Because they never had VAR when they played and they don't like it.
But particularly when they've got 6 hours in a studio between the incident happening and discussing it on said TV programme to do exactly what we did in 5 minutes. But they don't want to do that because the agenda is to criticise the VAR, which, to be fair, we've done it on this podcast. It's hard not to. But when it's right, they've got to be given fair crack of the whip, and they've got it right. They've got so many decisions wrong this season, but that's not one of them. I mean, you mentioned about distance between ball and player, but even that's irrelevant because his hand is so far out of context of where it needs to be. I mean, it's a good 3 foot above his head. He's only blocking a shot. He don't need to, he's not trying to circle planes or anything like that. So even the distance that it's travelled is irrelevant. His hand should not be there, and it's just hit his hand. And yeah, it's a penalty kick.
Can you get your arm 3 foot above your head?
He can, because it was 3 foot above his head. And
no, but it is. It's frustrating. I don't want to veer into conspiracy theories and that they've got an agenda against Luton. I know that people say that.
Are you trying to say that the Presenters football club that's been replaced by our beloved Luton Town is forming a vendetta of some kind?
Well, there does seem to be a stereotype about what Luton is, and that they're not doing the right things, and then that extends to how they play, and then they can probably use as a stick to poke them with the amount of chances they created yesterday or shots they had and they didn't score against him. They can add all that into the mix, but I don't want to veer towards that on this occasion. I want to say that the rules are too confusing and they keep changing them. And if the national broadcaster are getting it that wrong, then there's something wrong with the rule.
BBC getting things wrong.
Surely not. I think the important thing to notice here is, I mean, you both alluded to the fact that these are footballers of a generation ago who were played under different laws of the game with no VAR or anything else like that. If you're going to take anyone's word for it, let's talk about the word of someone who's headed up these officials in the past, Chris Foy, who in a newspaper article earlier on has... he said exactly why it is a penalty, and I'll read it, quote his column. Wolves can have no complaints about the penalty. Issa Kabore's cross deflects off João Gomez's foot and onto his hand, which is a long way above his head. It's actually 3 foot above his head, Chris. His arm is clearly not in a natural or normal position.
Inspector Gadget in a previous life.
That's what Josh Smith felt, and VAR John Brooks agreed. The law is very clear. Gomez made his body unnaturally bigger. It's that simple. And it is.
It is that simple, but yet there's. I don't know if anybody's seen. There's a fantastic Twitter spat.
Oh, it's brilliant
between Dale Johnson of ESPN, who's like a VAR expert, and Gary Lineker, who's still doubling down on the fact that he thinks it's a ridiculous decision.
Who can we just clarify is not a VAR expert?
No, and Dale Johnson gives a great account of every reason that they talked about and why it's not true. And why it's not in the laws, it's why it's not true. The only one he sort of concedes to is maybe the proximity, but he said even so, in almost every situation, I'm paraphrasing, maybe we'll get the thread up and you'll be able to see it on the screen if you're watching this, but he said in every occasion, that's going to be a penalty. So it's interesting. Now I'm just saying that. Maybe there is an agenda against Luton then, because... unless you just really don't want to be proved wrong, which I don't think is very healthy. I mean, if I'm proved wrong on something and a fact is a fact, then fair play. Hold your hands up and go, well, I've learned something. Haven't you?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And also, match of the day, if you're not going to give 5 minutes on a clear James Ward-Prowse handball, don't give 5 minutes when you're wrong.
Did they even feature it?
They did look at it.
Barely.
No, it's the Fulham ones they didn't feature in it.
The thing also as well, for just like when VAR was first introduced to the Premier League, you saw a lot of defenders defending with their hands behind the back, so trying to avoid getting a penalty given against them. So I don't know why we're still seeing people with their arms out 3 foot above their head, as you quite rightly said.
He was 3 foot above his head.
It was 3 foot above his head. But he has no business having his arm up there, whether it's naturally trying to block it or whatever. It's no business up there, and that's why it's a penalty.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't smacked. It wasn't deliberately smacked.
It wasn't smacked at him. No, Gabor is trying to score or cross it for someone to score.
You want to put your arm in the way? We'll have it from 12 yards.
Thank you.
But also, if you go back to the point I made earlier, the amount of sort of last-ditch style blocks they were making, which it's good defending, but you don't want to be in those situations, and that's what that is, isn't it? You throw your body in the way like that. You're not thinking about your hand position because you're just desperate to get in the way. So on the one hand, it's good defending, but on the other hand, if your arm's going to be up like that, 3 feet above your head.
This is a theme now for every penalty decision we talk about.
Do you know what? Rather than talk about the rules of penalties, somebody should get a tape measure out and see how far somebody can get their arm above their heads.
Wish I brought mine with me now. I've got quite a long arm.
Easily
it's good 3 foot, mate.
Yeah, easily. It's about 3. I'd say 2-3 foot.
I mean, to throw yourself in front of everything is good defending, but the fact that you've got to throw yourself in front of something in the first place suggests that maybe something's gone a bit Pete Tong somewhere along the line, because you're taught to stand up as a defender, aren't you? So if you're actually going against that, something's gone wrong. I thought
did we just have the edge on them there a little bit a few times?
I thought Wolves, defended really, really well. To be fair to them, apart from the sort of basket case moments, and they had to, because our wide players were getting good quality balls into the box. Our midfielders were penetrating them, and when the ball got to Ogbene, they couldn't cope. And let's finish this podcast off on that positive of Chio Ogbene. We asked, was it Chio time in the preview podcast? I think everyone knew it was Chio time, really. His performances on international duty just confirmed that, really, as did his cameo at Fulham. And within about 5 minutes, you just knew he was going to have a field day on Saturday, because none of the fullbacks, and they tried 3 against him because he switched sides, and obviously Doherty came off the bench and this, that and the other, none of them could get close to him. He absolutely had a brilliant game for a first Premier League start, and I'm glad you corrected yourself on Twitter when you called it his full Premier League debut. I don't think you could have asked for much more, to be quite honest. Obviously, you'd have loved him to have got to that ball when Dawson put it past the goalkeeper, but I thought it was a really, really promising full debut.
Oh, he was brilliant.
He was the man of the match as well. Let's not.
If anyone was at the ground, the sponsors gave it to Carlton Morris, which is just the most nonsense. I mean, he was good
because he scored.
He was good because he scored, but
because they want to meet him.
Ogbene was the man of the match by half time, and he continued playing well into the second half. So, that's. I mean, they always get that wrong. The sponsors a bit too much of the old vino. That's what it is, isn't it? A complimentary vino.
Sounds good to me, actually, to be fair.
How much is it?
No, I'm all right. I'm quite happy with my position in the Kenilworth end, actually. Going forward, though, Dan, we mentioned earlier in the podcast about that 3 up front. I mean, Chio just looks ideal for one of the wide spots.
Yep.
You've got Morris, who's obviously going to have the central spot.
Yep.
That's 2 of the 3 parts covered, really.
Yeah. And there's arguments for who takes that spot up, whether you move Doughty up into a more advanced position. Might have to sort his shooting out a little bit, because I think, if he's going to cut in and from wide positions and not cross it, shooting. I mean, he scores great goals.
He's got his head filled with goal of the month twice in a row, isn't he? So.
Yeah, I think that's it. But Carlton Morris getting in the way, because he should have had one earlier in the game.
They've obviously had enough of Alfie winning goal of the season.
Yeah,
getting in the way of his shots now.
Please stop doing it. Happen, but there's arguments for other players. I mean, Elijah, I still think has a future. I don't know why that's ever in doubt in some people's minds, but for me, he still has a part to play this season, and he'll play a big part. Jacob Brown as well looks decent. What I've seen of him, he tries hard, runs at people, wants to do it. I think Ogbene's more or less cemented his spot from yesterday's performance alone. Morris is always going to start, like you said. It's just but we've got options, and they're good options. And we'll only improve as well. Like if any of them move on, we can trust Mick and the team to unearth another gem from nowhere, like they keep doing year on year.
He frightened the life out of the Wolves yesterday.
I mean, when we signed him, we were getting ridiculed, weren't we?
Yeah. Oh, you've gone up to the Premier League and you've signed somebody who got relegated from the Championship.
Well, I suppose the only thing you probably would say is that he's got unbelievable pace. But the fact that he was the second fastest player in the Premier League the last 3 years after Kyle Walker speaks for itself.
That's fast.
It is fast.
Very fast.
It is rapid. Yesterday, the fullbacks didn't know what hit him because you don't need a lot of skill when you've got that. He's like, you knock it past him and beat him for pace, and he did it numerous times. I suppose the one thing on that point about, well, he's come up for League One or the Championship, and what they're talking about is it's the final ball and the execution, I suppose.
You'd kind of hope, though, with a run of games.
Absolutely, yeah. And
Run of games, getting chances. We've said it before with Elijah when he was struggling to score. As soon as you get a goal, they'll start flying.
Yeah, but that's in the Premier League. That's what you need. A bit of pace, and it was just old fashioned wing play, and people loved that. It's bums off seat stuff, wasn't it? And he was so good. And I mean, the stuff he was everywhere really. I mean, some of his stats are fantastic, like 21 out of 23 passes completed, 4 chances created, 2 big ones. He had 43 touches, but then 100% dribble success rate, which is phenomenal.
That's good.
If that's the start, then I can't wait to see what's going to come after that, because I was impressed with his little cameos. He's coming and off the bench, but then that yesterday was just different gravy.
I mean, the two stats that you've not read out: 8 crosses, 4 recoveries. Now we'll talk about Chio and the Everton preview podcast. But going into these big away games, you're going to need someone who creates, but we're also going to need someone who gets the ball back, like Jacob Brown did at Fulham last week. 4 recoveries is perfect going forward, and he can do the defensive work, as he actually showed, because Rob took Issa Kabore off, didn't he, for the last 10 minutes, and Chio went to play right wing back, and he still had that left back on toast even then.
Yeah. It was such an exciting addition. Really, you've seen what he did when he played for Ireland as well. Again, squint if you're watching this. Ireland. people on the audio podcast don't know what I'm talking about. I'm wearing a 1986 Mexico shirt. It's the closest I could get to the one Ireland one. And I had fajitas for dinner.
But no sombrero, thankfully.
Thought Sundays were for roasts. Never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mexican roast.
Mexican roast.
It was really encouraging, though, wasn't it? Just the fact that we called for him, everyone called for him, we wanted to see him, and he stood up and delivered, and he's got a confidence about him, hasn't he? Because earlier in the season, he came back from international duty, didn't he? And he said we need to be more arrogant, which actually we called him out for because we want the confidence, not the arrogance sort of thing. But he's obviously got lots of belief in himself. And Jesus, if you're that quick, why wouldn't you have lots of belief in yourself? He's.
Well, I spoke to him yesterday as well, and obviously the talk was about how quick he is as well. And he's just like, well, it's just a God-given talent that I've got. I've just got to exploit it, really, and that's the right attitude.
And also, you think that he displayed that on a tight, cramped surrounding at Kenilworth Road. When we go to some of these big grounds where he's got lots of, particularly in away games where teams are coming at us and there's lots of space in behind. I mean, hello, it's going to be it's going to be worth watching. That is for sure. Yeah,
definitely.
I just hope it. For me, that's an undroppable performance, isn't it? But also, we're talking about horses for courses per game, and maybe it's a bit different in Goodison at the weekend. Who knows? It's definitely going to be a more physical battle. That's for sure.
Well, he's got to play him against Man City, hasn't he? Because we've got to have fastest against second fastest in the Premier League. That would be pointless if you don't do that. So
that could potentially end Walker's career, though.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
It's you're absolutely right, though. Very much. I mean, it was a day of plenty of positives for Luton. And I think we all agree that the biggest positive was the performance of Chio Ogbene, and of course the fact that we've got our first point. Just before we go then, let's have a quick look ahead to what's to come before the Everton game. And Dan, trip to Exeter in midweek in the third round of the Carabao Cup. I think Rob alluded to it pretty much straight away. He's going to make changes. So I would imagine that means that the players that were on the bench on Saturday are going to see a lot more action. And the one that I'm really interested in seeing is Teden Mengi, who we've not yet seen. He was on the bench yesterday. You would imagine him and Mads would get two of the defensive spots, and it'd be very interesting to see what he's like.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if anybody watched the FC24 video where they invited.
It's questionable, that bloke, isn't he?
There's a lot of questions to be asked.
Yeah, he's not sure about his attributes, is he?
Yeah.
Very questionable, a lot of them.
But we know for Mads Anderson, if in doubt, what would Jan Molby do?
Indeed, yeah. And James Shea doesn't give a shit.
No.
Couldn't care less, mate.
Couldn't care less, mate. Couldn't care less. He would. He does. Like you say, good opportunity for players that aren't quite getting minutes to get minutes. I'd imagine, like you say, Anderson and Mengi will get two of them three. I don't know who's going to get the third one, to be honest. Might bring a kid in. I don't know.
Yeah, might do. Might play Pelly there.
Yeah, Pelly's more than capable of doing it. Might stick with one of the three that played Saturday. I wouldn't have thought Lockyer or Burke would get a nod.
No, it definitely won't be Bell either. I'm pretty sure we won't be going nowhere near Exeter with Bell, not after what he said about managing his minutes when he came back from international duty.
I think that's probably a reason why he's sort of been off of it a little bit, because with having not having a pre-season but being away with your country, it does take it out. It's completely different, two different things.
Agreed, yeah. Or it could be an ideal time to play a back four, to play three up front like he did against Gillingham, and let's just see how it works. You've got two centre-halves in Mengi and Anderson. You've got Giles, who's presumably going to be the left back.
Yep.
Find someone at right back, and then you can play three up front. Elijah, Woodrow. In midfield, you've got Berry, you've got Pelly, you've got Chong. So even though he's going to make changes, and he didn't actually commit to 11, but you just got to think that the proximity of the Everton game is probably going to mean near to 11 as possible. It's still going to be a strong side when you read it out from 1 to 11.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, all last season, you'd say there was a strong 11, maybe one or two that could come in, but they've got two sides now, really, that you can make a decent fist of a League Cup or FA Cup contest. It doesn't all have to be about the Premier League. At the same time, if they go out, nobody's going to be that bothered. But I know, all due respect to Exeter as well, but it's a game that you should be looking to win for confidence levels as well. And yeah, I just hope to see that. It would be nice to see Mengi. Giles obviously needs to build up a bit more confidence. That would be a key one for me. Adebayo surely starts, and he'll be desperate to prove himself. And that's the thing, isn't it? Because I was always doubtful about games like that where you talk about players performing and then putting themselves in the shop window for the manager. Never seemed to quite work for me. That never seemed to come to fruition. But Doughty had a great game against Gillingham, and now he's in the side over Giles. So maybe it's different under Edwards. Yeah,
Brown as well started the Fulham game. Ogbene too. Yeah, it's if you are going to Exeter on Tuesday night, it will be a much changed side, but there's still plenty to look forward to. And of course, hopefully we can win the game. Then we're into the last 16 of a cup competition. Me personally, I don't buy this bollocks that you want to be out of the cups if you're fighting a relegation battle. I think every win you can get breeds confidence, and it'll be a good thing, particularly ahead of a big game at Everton on Saturday. Okay, that's it for this episode of the podcast. Before we go, if you did listen to the David Wilkinson podcast, you'll have heard him say how important the trust is. If you're not a member of the trust and you'd like to be, to give us a bigger and better voice, please do join. The link to do so is in the copy under where you've picked up this podcast. £10 for adults, £5 for concessions. We will keep on fighting the good fight for all Luton fans. But the more of you that can join the trust, the bigger and better our voice can be. And as Wilco alluded to, that's very, very important. Okay, that is it, as I say, for this episode. Thanks very much to the Hightown Club for hosting us. Thanks very much to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our wonderful intro, which I really enjoy. And to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs and everything that you see on our set. Thanks to you for listening. Thanks, James, to Dan for joining me. And until next time, come on, you Atters, we're off the mark.
Can you believe it? We are Premier League! Yes!
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls.
We're Luton people.